your comment clicked a whole pattern recognition thing for me, so I want to talk about this. So one of the things we have to recognize is that many of us who are low support or the little professor types, or were even categorized as gifted and very mature for our age, as children, a lot of the autistic behaviors that are part of the low support needs autistics kind of show as maturity to allistics. The idea of being very orderly and rigid and having control and not wanting to be loud and play and do lots of like kid-like things. We very often were shoved into a box of being like old souls, mature for your age, even if we socially and emotionally were lacking. We were seen as just being these kinds of old souls, and in many ways that covered a multitude of sins enacted against us as children. And so this kind of like, you were born, going on 30 or whatever it was, very often it was classified because the autistic traits that we demonstrated were seen as maturity, and we were shoved into situations in which we were not emotionally and socially ready to handle. Beyond that fact, the parentification also plays out, not just because as a child we were read as being more mature and older, but that statistically it's more likely for parents of autistics to have either undiagnosed autism or other personality disorders, and trauma. So this is something that plays into like intergenerational transmission of trauma, as well as the elements of a dysregulated and deregulated previous generation raising children who seem more mature than they actually are. With that, obviously, parentification is a major factor from dysregulated parents. It doesn't justify what happened to any of us, but it does explain potentially why it's happening so often. That if we have a bunch of mentally unwell adults who are raising autistic children, who then by allistic norms seem more mature than they are, the parentification almost becomes a given. And if our parentification is almost a given, or is at least a high proportion of people who have this, kind of style of autism or particular pattern of autism, then naturally those of us who are parentified and have this particular pattern of autism tend to show up in the world as more controlled, more mature, more able to handle all the crises that are thrown at us, so then justifies other people throwing more crises and, their panic at us, because of course we can handle it. Then again, perpetuating a system of abuse that exploits us for the very autistic traits that disable us. So yeah, that's the pattern, and it may not be completely coherent because of the fact that I'm still processing it, but that's kind of what I'm seeing in terms of what you said.